Hey everyone, it's D7 from D13 Airsoft. This is my friend Nico, who you've seen in a couple of the real still shooting vids, and hopefully with overlay footage and pictures from this video, along with some future videos, you're going to see more of them. Nico is about to become hopefully a full-fledged member of the team, but also he, in this video, as we're going to talk about, has gotten into Airsoft, which is obviously the primary purpose of this channel, and he was able to participate in OP Thunderdome, the OP Lion Claws game that happened here in North Carolina. First off, I want to say shout out to Crisper. He was the head admin for this event. He did a really awesome job. I've been friends with him online for many years, and it was awesome to see him in person and be able to execute just a really fantastic event in a very unique location. Also, shout out to RSM. They're a team that took up the majority of who we are running with. D13 only had about 4 people, including Nico, actually go to the event, plus 2 more as admins, who hopefully you'll see their perspective on this event in a separate video. But because of that, we needed more players. So we said, hey, we have a good relationship with RSM. They're also a local team we know good and well. And they had a good 9-man squad going out there. So we worked together, got some awesome footage together, had a great time. So thank them for that. Now, with that said, as you can probably tell by the video description, this is a AAR. So essentially, we are going to talk about some various topics about the event, and kind of just some of our thoughts about it, what we liked, what we disliked, and certain categories of it. And we're going to start out with the first question that I had, which was you, Nika. This was not just your first big Airsoft game. This was, we'll talk about it, but this is largely technically a Milsim, but also this is really your first Airsoft game in general. So kind of just first thing, blanket statements, not even specific to just OP Lion Claws or Thunderdome, but just as an Airsoft game, what were some thoughts you had about it?
Well, first of all, holy cow, it was actually very surprisingly inviting. I only know Airsoft through memes or whatever, so I was as far out as you could be. I've been into real still game for a long time, and I know how that crowd really is, and I didn't really know how Airsoft was, so it was because of Chandler that I was actually able to know what this was, and I was like, alright, I'll just get set up. And my first reaction was just how, everybody was part of it. Everybody dressed the part, everybody acted the part, and everybody was in the good sense of aggressive. Everybody was aggressive and trying to get to the points, get the kills and everything like that, so it was very fun. And it was actually from an extremely outside perspective. My favorite part was how the game even started. It was the Friday night, and now just having everybody rush forward. Everybody was in a good mindset, everybody sort of kind of knew what they had to do, and it was just game on, so.
Nice.
Yeah.
Going on to the next one's what are some of the biggest surprises, or unexpected things that happened from the game? So both of us, from different perspectives, had different notions of going into it. I know if you don't have one off the top of my head, I had quite a few. One, I got some notes on this laptop, that's why I have it here. One was night vision use. So OP Thunderdome took place in an abandoned mall. There were some lights in the main hallways. The basement had some lights you could switch on and off manually. Some of the back hallways, but a lot of it was a lot of ambient light, and when it got dark, even in the daytime, it really did get kind of dark in there. So there's a big up in the air of how useful night vision was going to be. Now for me personally, I only had some weird variant knockoff of a PBS-7 made out of Chinese and Russian parts. So it wasn't the greatest night vision device out there. And I know you had that Psionics monocular.
Yo.
Now that Psionics monocular actually wasn't too half bad. And the thing was, and I guess kind of skipping ahead to this question of night vision use, is it really that important for an event like this? The answer is both yes and no. For me, what I expected going in was, oh man, it's going to be a mall, it's going to be nighttime, lights are going to be shut out, you need to have night vision or else you're going to get destroyed. The answer was really, not really. The basement again had lights most of the time. Later on in the weekend they completely turned the lights out, but then gameplay-wise the basement wasn't that relevant, so it just didn't really need to go down there that much. With a night vision device like mine, it's very reliant on ambient light. So if it's pitch blackout, a lot of the night vision devices just weren't working that well. I mean, it's better than nothing, but not by too much. In addition, I think what's more important over NVG use was the use of a tactical light of some sort, especially a weapon light on your rifle. You weren't sneaking around people usually. You know, it was one side of the mall versus the other. You knew where everyone was, and you knew you just kind of shine your light. You could figure it out.
On your point of you weren't actually exactly sneaking around, I was the guy that was picked out of the entire group of 7 or 8 people who knew what they were doing and said, "Hey, you sneak around." So it was great. Around when you do get the random chance, night vision does help, and especially when entering the basement for the very first time, we couldn't use flashlights because they had control of the hallway. But with me having a bit of night vision and a little bit of ambient light that there was, I could get myself around to where I needed to be. Later on, when rooms were completely pitch black, it's when it kind of stopped working that it needed to be. Also, foggy goggles and night vision work a lot worse than you think.
Yeah.
If you think that you can't see through foggy goggles, put on foggy goggles and then night vision. It is absolutely worthless.
Yeah, so a couple things from what you just said. One, it sounds like, from your perspective, you did have a use for night vision.
Yeah.
For me, not really, but then again, I wasn't sneaking around too much. I knew what was ahead of me and what wasn't, and so on. So a rifle light was more important. But tacking on to that, I did notice that for those who were walking around with good PVS 14s, good Gen 3, PVS 31s, and dual tubes, I mean, a lot of them were using it. I think you're going to see a lot of footage come out that looks really cool. At the end of the day, I saw a lot of guys walk around with the night vision and they just weren't using these, $2, $3, $5,000 night vision goggles that they thought they would. So the answer is a little bit in between. I was showing one side of each, show another. But really, I mean, if anyone who goes to an event like this and think, "Oh man, I don't have night vision," get a rifle light. You're going to be fine for the most part. And then the second thing you were saying was the fogging, right? So fogging in general with the iPro, that is something airsofters are well aware of. That's kind of a new thing for you because you have to have the full seal instead of just normal safety glasses. But also having that with night vision. And then also sometimes the moisture get on the night vision lens, so you got the goggles and the lens, you got it defogged. Yeah, it's a whole so there's that. The other thing was due to this being a very public area, being at a mall, there's still one corner that's still active, like a theater or something like that. So what they asked of us was we had to have all of our tactical gear, like all of that was fine to walk through the parking lot and back, but our airsoft guns, airsoft sidearms, any grenades like that, we had to put in a box or something to cover it and then go inside. There's a lot of law enforcement present there covering us. So what that really meant is we had a lot of stuff left after spawn. So I was already planning on bringing a rucksack just to have extra supplies. But then also meant I was carrying my gear, then this giant rifle bag, and it was kind of hasty ruck around. I know a couple guys got pretty creative. They came out with like wagons and cars and just shoved their stuff and wheeled it on the tile floor. But that was kind of a new one for me too, because most spawns you take what you can just for sustainment's sake, or you just leave it. Big deal. But again, the talk about like the biggest surprise expectations I wasn't thinking about. That was something.
I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't realize it was going to be this bad. How uncomfortable you're going to be having 3 different things strapped to your face. I had eye pro, I had ear pro, I had face protection, and the helmet, with or without nods. And through a good portion of the game, I would just have my hand on my face shield because I didn't have it in just the right spot. And there was a point that we got separated because I had to strip everything off and strip everything back on. I was just not okay. So you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable very quickly. I was not.
Yeah, so clarification, so you had a balaclava like mine, but then you also had the metal face mesh that a lot of players like to have. You had full seal goggles, not like iPro, but goggles.
Full goggles.
And then you had electric ear pro underneath, effectively an ACH. It wasn't like a fast helmet or anything.
No, this was a level 3,
Yeah, so
with ear covers. It's a level 3 with ear covers, so that means even more weight was on my ears.
Yeah, so the ACH is what the kind of what the military
okay.
Yeah, so point being, you did have a lot of layers. There was a time when that was the thing for a lot of military that deal with it, and that's why you started to see a lot of guys develop the rails on the helmets to clip on for the ear pro. The face protection, that's why I took the risk of just wearing the balaclava covering my face and not the actual mesh mask, because it just reduces a lot of the nonsense. Of course, there's a trade-off to that, but generally speaking, there's some ways to get around it. That's true. Another big surprise for me were ricochets and BBs on the ground. So in this mall, almost the entire area either had cement or 1x1 tan tiles on the floor. So along with that, plus a lot of like the glass display windows in the stores, any BB that did not hit you and instead hit any of that stuff would go flying to the other side of the field practically. I mean, you could be within freaking 10, 15 yards of it hitting a wall, and it could fly a different direction and smack you, and you would have to double take and think, wait, did I just get shot? No, I'm in it. No one could get me from here. What was that? You know? I know when you were running, there would be so many BBs from just normal shooting plus the grenades on the floor that when you would run, you would kick the BBs up and kick them just yards down the road. So if you're sliding or ducking or whatever, you just feel everything on your shins and say, hey, wait, did I just get shot? You know, so it was a lot of double taking. It's definitely the most ricochets I've ever seen in the airsoft field because of that. Even indoor fields I've been to aren't that bad. And it was definitely something to get used to. So that was probably an interesting experience for you as well for the first time.
And then my last bit that was so surprising would be how difficult room-to-room fighting is. Yeah. Now, by that saying, there were a lot of times that we got choke point. There were a lot of choke points. I'm not going to get through all of them, but a lot of choke points behind doors to the point that a couple of our guys accidentally blued on blued you and somebody else because they threw a grenade and then closed the door behind it, so all blue on blue was just like done. So it was very chaotic trying to do room to room.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not really a hot take to say that close quarter combat of any type is incredibly lethal for both sides. It's not something you really want to do, and it's incredibly confusing, right? There's a lot of blue on blue. There's a lot of, so is that a ricochet, is that not? Is it a ricochet from friendly fire or enemy fire? It's dark, it's confusing, got grenades going off. And I mean, with this field, we're very limited on our resources, and really the best thing to do is to shine a bunch of lights in people's faces and toss as many grenades as you can in, which is something we'll probably talk about later and kind of the difficulty with that. But yeah, definitely. Another thing that I was not expecting, this is something we'll get to in a later question, is the basement was blocked off out of the 4 ways you can get into the basement of this field. 2 of the 4 were blocked for half the event, and then 1 more was opened eventually. But that meant that's 1 less entrance exit you could go to. And what this generally led to, along with that, was the basement being kind of useless in terms of gameplay. Again, I'll talk to it in a later section in more detail, but really I saw, before we went to the field, we saw the map of the mall being kind of this T shape with a little J hook at the end, and then you have this big rectangle in the middle underground for this big, vast labyrinth of a basement. And I thought, okay, well, this basement's going to be a big deal. Well, in reality, I think only once I ever see either side use it, and it was on Sunday when we were getting bogged down the middle, and both sides would go in the basement to flank around just to get into another room that was like 100 feet away. What was the point?
Yeah.
Yeah, like it wasn't really a point in the grand scheme outside of just having fun, which, I mean, it was fun, you know, but that's about it. Any more thoughts for kind of big surprises, unexpected things?
I would say no. Okay. Everything else are like minor. They'll be probably touch up on later. Okay. Mainly equipment. Mainly equipment is what I've got surprised.
Yeah. So this is the next one, which is like the guns, equipment. So what did we personally bring and use, and what was some kind of big takeaways? I can start a little bit just to give you a basis. So we ran DEA versus versus cartel. So we were tan team. I wore multicam. You were some desert marpat. I had my load bearing system and my helmet, and I'll try to overlay some pictures of it. You had your chest rig and a pistol belt combo, and then all this headgear we were both wearing. Yeah. Guns, you had like was it a Vulcan?
Vulcan ASL. It's electric, just your basically
just standard battery. Yeah. It worked pretty well. I was surprised when I first saw it that you chose just such a short weapon. Usually you get longer length ones, but as we get to equipment, what we talk about now, like was it an issue being that short or anything? Or
no, so because I was like doing my own little scouting and like climbing through everything, I liked it being small, and actually I would go for something smaller. If I was going right back into this again next weekend, I would get something smaller and with a folding stock, so that way I can just throw it behind me and just start running to places. Okay,
and then I would say to that, conversely, is I had a 14.5-inch or 15-inch barreled style EMG AEG, and I'll tell you, it was fine. Like there was once or twice I kind of got hung up, but it was more being hung up with the sling, and that's kind of the issue in a close quarters environment than necessarily the length of the rifle. There are some guys with pretty long ones, like I know Zach D26, who was with us on the team. He had a pretty long rifle, and he was still doing some pretty decent room clearing with it. I mean, again, it's not a airsoft field that's designed like for guys who've seen my channel, who've seen the channel so far, like south field footage I showed. I talked about in the commentary how the field is designed to be very close quarters to the point where certain areas you can practice traditional room clearing, and other areas are so tight quarters you gotta think out of the box. Something like that, a long weapon would have an issue. Here, where it's an actual like by code building, it really wasn't too big of a deal to a certain extent. Going down, another big piece of equipment, which I'm going to talk about, is, of course, grenades. So, OP Thunderdome, as expected, could be summarized as grenades, grenades, grenades.
And more grenades.
And more grenades. So, I personally purchased about 35 grenades. How many did you purchase? Because you bought, what, 24 pack of
I bought, yeah, it was, actually, no, it was in total 18.
Okay.
It was 18. And then I chipped in and bought from you, and then, not from you, but from the store. And then we split, and then I bought an extra 2, thinking like, it shouldn't be that bad.
So out of the collective total, is we bought what, at least 50 grenades. Right. I know by the end of it, I had 3 left over the course of I think like 11 and a half hours worth of gameplay out the whole weekend. How many of your Thunder Bees did you use?
Thunder Bees, only because I didn't know how to use them. I still have a box and a half.
The game changer there, and we'll talk about why that was, because some of the roles for an OP Lion Claws game were limited there. That's kind of goes in like the kind of the more AAR comments and what can be approved. But yeah, definitely grenades were kind of a huge deal. They were constantly going off. Ear protection was obviously recommended. It's mandatory.
Do it. I had grenades landing right next to me, and I would have gone more time tonight if I didn't have ear.
For sure. Another one, and this is, I'm not sure, you use more night vision than I did, but this is something I checked as well. When I was using night vision, I tried to use my IR laser. So I have a Steiner OTOL C. It is a very basic IR laser. It's civilian powered. It has no IR illuminator with it. It's just a laser. If you saw my AR-15 video, I had it on that rifle. I just pulled it off, put it on my airsoft gun. That thing was so disappointing in the dark. Even in pitch black, you could barely see it with the night vision device I was using. And then add on all the other ambient stuff going on, ambient light, grenades going off, other night vision devices. It just didn't work. So it was essentially a paperweight on my rifle for the whole weekend. And I think I might mess with it a little more of real steel use, but really it's the nail in the coffin that I am probably going to upgrade to a much better IR device, at least for my actual rifle.
I just refuse to use the IR period, because actually one thing I would change with this rifle, because Chandler allowed me to borrow his setup, where the pressure pad was located, first half of the game, fine. Second half, my hand would cramp, and I would actually like mentally just say no. Ditch the lighter half of the pad, just use the front half. The one thing I would change with this rifle, because it's so short, I would actually have the pressure pad on a foregrip. So that way I can use index and middle for one half, and then ring and pinky for the second half. Because that way I would just be more inclined to use it, because now my hand's not cramping anymore.
Okay. Next one I had was iPro. So I am going to make a different video specific to it. I was using those Oakley frames with the rubber seal that comes with. I forgot what the exact model is called off the top of my head. But I also recently got a new 3D printed frame from On The Go Surplus, who are out there. And that thing was awesome. That's probably the best iPro setup I had, with some caveats. But I'm going to do a different video on that. I know you already talked about the goggles I gave you. That thing had a built-in fan into it, and you was still fogging.
Because I forgot to turn it on, but
even then,
yeah.
Let's see. Oh, here's another one. So, your airsoft rifle that you used, right?
Yeah.
Was there ever a moment, with the caveat understanding that airsoft guns only go so far, was there ever a moment where you said, man, if only I had a better airsoft gun, I could have hit that guy or have got more accuracy out of it?
No, because I had the one shot that I needed to be true, and that was at a Saturday afternoon game, and it was me and a guy. We're holed up like right behind glass. We switched spots. I don't know why he moved, but I was posted up, and it was the last guy on Cartel Squad. I was just staring right down at him, just waiting for him to slip up, and he chicken winged his elbow out. I'm like, this is it. And then all I did was just pepper and move my rifle upwards, because I was anticipating for drop, because I didn't have tracer BBs. Part of the equipment, I never had tracer BBs. Didn't know that there were biodegradable tracers, so that's going to be something I needed to get onto next. But the rifle made it when it counts. He flinched, and that was the entire squad down. So the one time I needed it, it worked, and it worked flawlessly. So range was not an issue.
Yep. And the same goes for me too. So like my rifle, like I'll be transparent, I haven't done any upgrades for it. And I think with shipping and handling, I purchased that thing off eBay a couple of years ago for like $300. You probably got yours about half that price. And more importantly, what
160.
yeah, and what more importantly, what your rifle is often considered a very good starter gun. Like you did nothing to it internally. That's a very good, just basic starter gun. A lot of airsoft fields have it as rentals. And people get a little intimidated seeing all these guys in tactical gear, these bigger events. And really, like, range-wise, especially in a close quarters area like this, just get a rental rifle and go have fun. Like, you don't need the most expensive gear to go to it and still just have a blast. So that was something I agree with as well. Again, one more thing I had for that was, in terms of rolls, would having the ability to go automatic on your weapon have changed anything for the positive for you?
Yes.
Okay.
The second part when I was jumped, or actually the first one too, is just if I was allowed to go full auto with that rifle, being able to actually suppress people when I needed to, it would be a game
Next question
changer.
would be handguns. So I know you purchased your first airsoft handgun there. It was a Elite Force 1911. That used to be like the gold standard for many years. It's still a good one. For me, I had the one of the SIG licensed M17s. But what I want to get with was, did you ever even use it?
I almost used it once, and that was the one that I got jumped. I mainly used rifle. The sidearm was backup.
And that happens for me too. Unless I'm really trying or I'm purposely limiting myself on ammo, my airsoft guns are pretty reliable. You're not really going to be in a situation where you need to have the handgun, unless there's some sort of like weird safe kill rules you have to do.
Continue, but I just realized something that actually helped me with handgun, so continue.
Okay. No, that was it on my... Well, for me, the conclusion was you don't really need a handgun. If you do, it's great to have, but kind of like a real rifle, like how often you actually... I did see a couple guys use handguns because their rifles failed on them, but generally speaking, you know, if you take care of your equipment, you're going to be fine. Next one I had was magazines for your rifle. So how many did you carry on you, and then what was the most you ever used before you had time to reload again?
So 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh yeah, I had 9 magazines for the rifle, and I only really needed to reload a handful of times, like less than 10 times. I wasn't that active out there anyways. But 9 magazines, I would have been fine. What I've probably been better with is having my magazines split up with 4 being regular BBs and 5 being tracer rounds. Because of what I went through, having the tracers to know exactly where I was going through and where my projectile was going would have been perfect. I would still want that 4 for regular BBs in case of like going on my stealth mission. Tracers work both ways, as we've learned and seen. So if I'm shooting into a dark room, I don't want the entire team to know as just one man poking in here. I want them to be scared, senseless thing, who's shooting at us.
Yeah.
So
And that is interesting, splitting your load if you got a tracer unit or not.
I would have liked to, yeah.
For me, and this is kind of what I get at, is I carry a pretty large load-bearing system, so I was purposely carrying a lot. I had 11 mags on me, including the one in the rifle, plus a Odin speed loader that has a couple thousand BBs into it. The most I ever used in a single life before I had to reload it was like 4 mags, and that 4th mag was still largely full. I mean, you saw some guys running out of ammo out there, just spraying and playing, but a lot of them had like 3 or 4 mags on them, and you know, a lot of these guys are SMG guys who could go automatic. But for the average rifleman, like grenades are more important than anything else, and with the Odin speed loader, like I could just reload as I was walking back to spawn or something. So I carry a lot of mags just to be safe, because that's how my loadout is designed. But it really wasn't that big of a deal. Next one, I personally carry a lot of different equipment on me. One was a cleaning kit that included a ramrod or unjamming rod. That did prove helpful because I had an RSM member running with us who did have his weapon jam. So it sucks, but that's why you had that equipment there. So instead of walking back to spawn, you can just do it real quick. If you did not have knee pads, you were wrong. You need to have knee pads. The reason I stress it so much is about a month before the game happened, we actually switched sides with CRISPR's. You know, actually CRISPR requested it of us because they were trying to get the pounce numbers right. So originally going to go cartel, but then we went DEA. DEA's multicam had all the equipment for that, including knee pads. But if we had gone cartel, I would have gone BDU uniform with no knee pads. and that would have sucked. That would have sucked real bad. You definitely wanted knee pads out there.
I had no knee pads.
That's right, you
and
didn't.
it was amazing. Yeah, no, nothing was terrible. Everything was amazing.
You just take a knee into a pile of BBs on the stone
Just
floor.
take a knee into a pile of BBs, break your kneecaps on concrete as you're power sliding to cover. Do it. It's fantastic.
Yep, it's totally, bro. Another thing, and this was something that was important. I brought a rucksack that had like 10 bottles of water for us to share throughout the event. Every time I died and went back to that spawn, I would chug a cup of water, just try not to use the water on me. I have 2 liters worth of water on me in canteens. I think with that system, I was only using like the most like half a liter of canteen before I had to refill it. So I still had 1.5 liters on me that I never really needed. So that was good. Anything else for that category?
Equipment, no, I don't. Learn your equipment before you spend an hour and a half in a firing range on a game that you pay money for. So, but I mean, I learned it, so that's just what it is.
At least you didn't lose anything. Guys are losing mags. I think a guy lost a suppressor, or pistols.
There was a brace that went missing. I only lost Allen wrenches, which also sucked too, because it was the Allen wrench to the pistol, the CO2.
But I had extra.
So, well, yeah. But if I didn't have you, or if you didn't bring yours, then I've been pretty much, gassed.
Yeah.
But I'm bumped, so.
Yeah. It's a good place to learn lessons. You're not out in the woods, so if you lose it, someone's probably going to find it.
Yeah.
Okay, so going on to the next one, this kind of bleeds into it, is the location itself. So OP Thunderdome was in the abandoned mall. It's super cool location. It's awesome that Lion Claws was able to get that. They're going to do another one in May, so long as everything went well. I think it went well. There's a lot of rules we had to follow to make sure we didn't tear this place apart.
We did break a glass.
Oh, we did?
Yeah, I watched it firsthand. A guy
Was it like a display window?
Oh, sort of. It was funny enough. It was the glass panel that was between the metal detector and the pillar. He just didn't know it was there, and the unit just busted through there, broke it, glass shattered all over the place. It was perfectly fine. The glass panel learned his lesson for its existing. So
got it. Yeah, generally speaking, yeah, they did a pretty good cleanup effort afterwards. But it's a super cool location. I'm really glad that we were able to do that. With that said, there were some notable things about that location. So first off, the building fighting was really cool. The back hallways were super cool. The basement was a really cool idea. But I'm going to go a little more into the negative, because generally it's quite positive. Like, it's a super cool location. But getting more into the nitty gritty, the terrain was pretty unbalanced for one side. So DEA had a spawn at the bottom of the J hook. And then Cartel had a spawn up at the end of the T-shape. I'll probably have a map overlaying on this video. But the Cartel side of the spawn was pretty unbalanced, because you had to run past the food court all the way down to that intersection. And then, the problem is if DEA could just make it around that corner in time, they could shoot down that hallway and jam them up. And the problem with the basement was it's pretty big, but all the entrance and exits were on that side. So, sure, for the most part, you couldn't get into the basement, but you couldn't use the basement to flank around either. You just had to smack your head against this very small funnel, which both sides suffered from. Now, we took advantage of it in the beginning, and we kind of creamed them most of Saturday, but on Sunday, we switched sides, and we were stuck in the same position. And it really sucked. Now, I feel Cartel's pain for that day. There are some ways to go around it, and I'll talk about that later in the AAR, but generally speaking, it was kind of a difficult situation there. Another thing was the side hallways. So when the side hallways existed and were open to us, they were really cool. They were a great advantage and a different use to being able to get around these choke points. The problem is there weren't as many as I thought. Next question is the actual gameplay / flow of the game. So kind of the rule side of it, like the game, like what did you like about it? What did you dislike? For me, I can start with some context. So Lion Claws is technically a Milsim company, but they don't always exclusively do Milsims. This is kind of in between, where it is kind of a Milsim, but really is advertised as a big game of cops and robbers. Having those breakups in the game, where in night games is about 1.5 hour segments, day games is 3-hour chunks, then like an 1.5 hour break. They gave you a lot of time to reset your footage, especially if I was recording something, upload it, give me more memory space. It allowed you to kind of recharge your batteries and just kind of get ready. And also, if there's any sort of gameplay issues, it allowed you kind of the admins to reset, figure it out. So I think that overall that turned out pretty well, and I'm okay with that. I already talked about the smaller segments I liked. I mean, would you agree with that?
Smaller segments, as in like
Yeah, like the 3-hour chunks. Or
3-hour
hour,
chunks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were good, getting a chance to eat and really use the restroom, and that was actually really useful because there were only one location and use the restroom, and that was just all the outhouses. So just having people just all go at once, just follow through was like a good idea for it. Yeah.
Let's see here. We can talk about this later, but Cartel did end up winning, and we'll talk about it later about just kind of what happened there. But I'll throw that in your head just now, just to remind me. Here's something I would say for an AR comment, and this is something that you may not be used to. So the feet per second / joule limits for chronographing your airsoft guns, I thought were way too hot for that AO.
Okay.
Now, with that said, that's their standard rules for OP Lion Claws, right? And again, the idea is like, hey, don't be a weakling about it. Like, you understand what you're getting into, wear your face mask if you have an issue, etc., right?
Well, even when I've got like one massive issue, but it's probably me against another player, because I had my deadlight on and I took my helmet off because I had like everything was falling off, and I had the deadlight on long enough and I was sitting upright to show that I am down. And I still got shot in the forehead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a ricochet because it was an actual impact.
Yeah,
so.
and the issue with this AR comment wasn't even the AO, the mall. It was Lion Claw's rules.
Yeah.
Because for me, I'll say this, I have very limited but some experience refereeing and running a field up in Alaska. That was a very small field, and it was just a normal like weekend day event. Right, it wasn't like we did big games often, but when we did, we would always have a very standardized FPS limit. First off, we didn't even care about FPS; we cared about joule limit, which is something a lot of fields are going to now. And the Lion Claws did look in that as well. I think 1.5 joules was the max for rifle class. The issue is 1.5 joules is our max for like anything. The old field that I worked at, and when we did, you would still have like a 20-foot safe kill distance. But because Lion Claws has no safe kill and no melee kills, you had to shoot them or get them a grenade or something or make them surrender just to avoid any physical contact. It meant, in theory, some guy could just walk up on semi-automatic with a 1.5 joule rifle and just schwack you in the face, right? I mean, it could be one shot. It doesn't have to be overshooting or anything, but that would be completely legal, right? And I found that very interesting. I would think they would have lowered those a little bit. Again, hey, you know what you're getting into, wear your mask, wear protective equipment that you choose, and if not, understand your risk, you sign the waiver. But that is definitely something I'm not used to.
I got schwacked 10 feet away from me from a full auto in my hand. Got a blood blister.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and that's kind
you're
of
going to get schwacked.
Yeah, and that's kind of another thing is the automatic. So for roles for the game, there are only 2 roles available out of Lion Claws. Lion Claws has like 4 or 5, but only 2 are available just due to the area. One was a rifleman class, meaning AR or AK style rifle, semi-automatic only, etc. SMGs, it had to be a PCC or a submachine gun style model. It couldn't be an AR with like a Stand-Ag mag. It just had to be like an MP5 or something. But you could go automatic. So that was kind of your support class for this event, which was pretty cool. The problem is, in theory, from what I understood the rules, and it was definitely practiced, was you could technically full auto someone at point blank. And there was an instance where I was going through a hallway. I do have it on camera, I think. If so, I might overlay it. I kind of got in this doorway, tossed some grenades in, and this guy just lit me and this other guy up at point blank with a automatic rifle. I mean, this is 5 feet, but point blank.
Yeah.
Even when I was getting shot and looking back on it, I could tell, based on these FPS and joule limits, that guy's SMG was perfectly within the rule set. He wasn't cheating. He wasn't shooting hot. He was following the rules, which is you could still fire an automatic, but it was rough. And I would say at an admin level and a gameplay level would say, hey, maybe make some adjustments in the future for that, just for safety reasons. But, hey, again, you know what you sign up for. And then something I already talked about, and I want to stress again, is Lion Claws has no melee or safe kills, which I found very interesting. That's the first event I've ever been to of any game type that just straight up avoids it. I guess the idea is like, hey, just avoid any physical contact. Don't even get people started on it. And I kind of get that, but I would also say, I know working at some other fields and going to many other events, there's always that option, right? I mean, you don't want to encourage people to just light each other up at point blank. So you want to have those options. You want to avoid people from sneaking up behind them and just touching. You don't even have to use a weapon or anything, just to give them an option. So that was kind of a unique one. I kind of would like to see at least melee kills. No safe kills, I kind of get, but I think a melee kill would be kind of nice. Something that happened later on, so as they went through the event, the admins kind of had to adapt to certain rules because it's a new AO. They've never done this before. And something they realized was hey, the fire alarms are going off in certain parts of this because of all the grenades we're using. So eventually there's just no grenades allowed in the basement. And then with them turning the lights off later on, it became pretty much, hey, a bunch of guys and nuts are sneaking around each other in this labyrinth, and you just got to take each other out. And that's when I was like, you know what? They can have fun down there. I'm not going to be part of that. Those guys can get some cool footage, but I'm not going to be part of it. Another thing I saw that was unique to Lion's Claws I haven't seen before was the use of a spawn card. So how this works is much like many Milsim style games, you have some sort of bandage or fake tourniquet to put on you every time you get shot by a friendly, so that you don't have to walk all the way back to spawn. It encourages you to stick together, teamwork, communicate, etc. The issue is if you use both of your tourniquets and you have to walk back to spawn, what you could do is a living player with a spawn card, which is usually team leaders and your commanding officer, could get a deck of cards that were issued to them and give you the card. You would then get the playing card and rip it to shreds and toss it so that no one could ever use it again. And then you can put your tourniquets away back in your pocket and you can get back in. Now you couldn't do this like under like direct fire. The idea is like, hey, we're trying to make a push, you can't do it, but if guys are pushed away, a spray BB hits you, commander's right there and grabs you, he's like, come here, and just gives you the card. I thought that was a really cool game system. I liked how it's consumable, being a playing card.
You actually used it on me. And
Yeah,
I'm pretty
yeah.
sure I've got a recording of that too. So
Yeah, 'cause
that'll work on here.
Yeah, because at that point I was actually the commander for that squad because RSM was running a little late. A lot of people were running late, so they just gave me the cards for that, and I was able to use it. So yeah, that worked pretty good. Something else I liked was the balloon mission. So for the second night mission we had to protect a bunch of balloons. There's like 50 or 60 of them in a big area in the food court, and the idea was we had to protect them because it was simulate civilians. Cartel was trying to pop the balloons by shooting them, or any melee kill or whatever. And each side would get points based on it. That was a cool mission, and kind of a AAR comment I want to integrate into that is I wish there were more missions like that.
Yeah.
So the bread and butter of the game was a bunch of cool different props like gold, like bricks spray painted like gold, fake drugs,
fake money.
Yeah, fake money, jewelry, airsoft guns that you could actually like smuggling guns simulate. All that prop stuff was super cool. I really liked that. And that's super cool that there was the bread and butter of it. It integrated the cops and robbers aspect to it. You had to defend your locations and your stash houses. That was cool. But then outside of that, the balloon mission was the only other different type of mission we did. I think a cool AAR comment would be is to integrate something else. Like escort missions, or maybe like a recon mission or intel mission. There's a lot of things you could do, even in a mall like that if you're creative. And I wish there was more to that. Maybe even like making extra points for holding certain types of buildings.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And I was about to say, like, even with that, in this game we only use balloons, but really using like an actual like dummy and dragging around a dummy and actually carrying it. And the rule would have to be that you have to treat this like a human being. You can't just grab them and throw them anywhere. You have to put them on your back or over your shoulder.
Another aspect I would say is before they had made the announcement, did you ever find a single objective or prop in the basement?
No.
Yeah, so I know at a certain point they straight up said, hey, at this point forward, there were no props in the basement. Yeah, Sunday they did. And then even then, like beforehand, I never really saw any. So again, really tacking on how useless the basement was in terms of gameplay. Again, it was fun. I just wish they integrated more into it. But then again, if you have half the exits closed, what are you going to do?
They should have made it into a spawn point. What they should have done was have a paradrop location in the spawn point. In the basement.
That would be interesting, because the idea would be, yes, the cartel for most of Saturday and DEA most of Sunday would have an advantage of the being close to all the entrance exits to the basement, but if both sides had a spawn of some sort in the basement.
A small like 7v7 to secure the basement.
Yeah.
And of course, we all had radios. Radios maybe have worked, maybe not. Actually, they did.
They did work in the basement.
The having it as a spawn point and then being able to radio into your commander or whatever, saying that, hey, we're at this point in the basement. Then you can have reinforcements coming running down or not, but it would make the basement more inviting.
Yep,
and also really actually having like the largest and most difficult to transport objective in the center of the basement would have been extremely cool. Like try carrying something up those stairs
and have more fighting on those stairs.
Yes. That should have been done.
Yeah, that would have been a lot more fun. I would also say in the start of each of the day games for Saturday and Sunday, they would have units on each side start in the basement, start at the police station, the stash house, and whatnot. Essentially had everyone layered and staggered, even though the spawns were in polar opposites.
Yeah.
And that had a fun dynamic in that first 20 to 30 minutes of each game. So having a spawn down there would have helped perpetuate that for sure. So that's a good comment. Anything else on that before I move to the next part?
Have more aggressive admins pushing people out of the stores. Because a lot...
That's a leadership role.
Well,
that's
leadership
role.
maybe? Okay, well...
Admins should be impartial, and they should be regulating the rules, and it should be leadership that should be doing that, which kind of goes in the next one, which is admin, staff, and planning, so like that side of the house, and then also the player leadership side.
Okay.
I think player leadership would actually be a shorter conversation, so you want to start with that?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I would say leadership on both DA and Cartel, perfectly fine. I think, hey, good job for them for stepping up and doing that. I was pretty active in the DEA planning page, and props to them. I forgot the CEO's name already. I apologize. But he was a great guy. He was active. I saw him out there all the time. I know Cartel's leadership was very charismatic. They're also a higher level in Lion Claws, so they're helping the admin side as well. So they're helping out with a lot of the events. And they gave them more of a presence. But I like both. They're great groups of guys and girls.
If you don't pay attention to your CEO like me, you're going to get lost.
Yeah, pay attention. And that was kind of the biggest thing is this wasn't technically a Milsim, and because of that, you didn't get a lot of the Milsim style leadership. It was a lot more lax, whether it was meant to or not. People didn't take it as seriously, and that always leads to disorganization issues. I know as someone who goes to Fold the Gap each year, that is explicitly not a Milsim event. It is a scenario event. And because of that, it is like herding cats when you have hundreds of people charging up and down a hill. So I definitely feel for these guys. I know for us, we were Echo Squad. It was RSM, us, and then a bunch of other players who, outside those two guys I saw there in that Friday night game, Echo Squad just didn't exist outside of RSM and D13.
Which is kind of disappointing. I would have loved having like a group like the other teams, right? Yeah. They were like a solid Echo team, like actually building and bonding. But I actually bonded more with the other misfits that were like ones and twos getting lost somewhere when I like respawn and get to a good hard spot, and then having people jump on me and said, "Hey, where's everybody?" I'm like, either there. I had more camaraderie with those guys than entirety of Echo.
Yeah, and also there's a side of that as well. So like I think Dark Horse, they were Alpha Bravo Squad, and Alpha Bravo and Charlie, they were the more organized groups.
There was Reapers.
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of them, but the CO knew a lot of these teams. He had them organized that way, and because of that, because they stuck together, and because there was a lot of them, they got more missions. They were the ones placed in a lot of the beginning of the games. I mean, that's another advantage to having a organized team go to these events and actually sticking together. And I mean, with RSM and D13, yeah, we did, but in comparison to these other guys, I mean, they really had it down pat. So I would say definitely for a lot of individual players going. If you don't go as a team, either find a team. I know for an event like this, they gave you well in advance if you're in the planning page who was going by name and by team membership. So try to tag along with someone, but just try to stay organized. I know some guys just like to go here and there and have fun, but personally, I found the most fun I always had is just freaking sticking to the rules and following the team. Just going alone, it's just not fun for me, but a lot of people think completely differently on that. Okay, so admin, staff, and planning. So first off, I would say we had 2 D13 members who were actually admin volunteers for this event. And I know for both of them, I'm going to try to do a video in the future interviewing them about their experiences on the admin side of the house. Because this is the first time both of them have really done a serious admin job. I have some experience of doing this in the past. I think a really cool video to make on that and see their perspective on it. I know for us, kind of looking far back, I know this event was first announced to the public October, November time frame. Within 48 hours of the tickets going up, all the tickets were sold out for almost like, what, 250-ish tickets? Yeah. I know, I called you immediately.
You told me, hey, how the tickets are gone, buy them now. I'm just like, I'm clocking into my job. I'm clocking in right now, Chandler, come on.
And talking about the admin planning, I know it was a huge headache of people coming and going over the couple of months planning for. I know CRISPR did a great job trying to stick to it. I remember being on the shooting range in Alaska in like negative 10 degrees, getting a call from them saying, hey, your payment method didn't go through. Can we work something out? I was like, yes, absolutely, please. Let me help get this working. So I'm incredible dedication on his part, making sure this happened. Of course, the obvious is being that the fact this even happened to begin with at this mall. Another big pain in the butt was Lion Claw's working with law enforcement and local security to make sure this place was secured and everything was, legal and fine. The police and law enforcement present there was actually very nice. I had no issues with them.
They were chill.
Yeah,
they were chill.
They're doing it. I think one of them, the head of security for the mall, he was actually playing as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yep.
A lot of admin, well, not a few admins, but like the actual leadership of Lion Claw was actively participating on DEA and maybe Cartel, but
yes, Cartel as well. And I think that's part of it. The
Yeah.
idea is just helping make sure they stir the LARP of the event, right?
Yes, the LARP. He said the line.
Yep. See here, handling a balance issue. So something that I saw throughout the event was, and this is something that's a very important as an admin, is being able to read the room and see how events are going. Because at the end of the day, the biggest thing isn't who wins or lose, it's if everyone's having fun. That seems kind of generic and kind of, hand-holdy to say, but I mean, it is true. I mean, Airsoft is a hobby for a lot of people, and they're there to have fun. I mean, no one's there to not have fun, right? Mm-hmm. So being able to see that it's certain one side. So for example, night games were pretty decent. The first night game, I thought was pretty balanced. All of Saturday day game, we completely wiped the floor of Cartel. Night game, they had a good advantage over us. We got our hindquarters largely kicked, though we did do all right on the balloon mission. And then Sunday with the spawn switch, we got our hindquarters kicked again. Yeah. Now, specifically with Sunday, with Friday and Saturday going through, they kept adding more stuff on, like, hey, don't shine lasers, IR lasers in guys' faces, especially the visible lasers, because a lot of these are not civilian powered. They're cheap Chinese ones that have a higher power that you're not supposed to have. And people are purposely blinding each other instead of using them with night vision. That sucks, but I kind of get it. I know for a lot of North Carolina fields, they specifically say, hey, you can't use those for insurance reasons, and I get it. It sucks because you kind of want to use them with night vision, but hey, it's another reason to have passive abilities with your night vision device. So get an optic that you can do that. Yeah, there's no civilian issues that I saw either. See here, one flaw I did notice was there was no water at the spawns. Again, they broke it apart in like 3-hour segments at the max. Other segments like an hour and a half, but still no water at the spawn. Yeah. I mean, it's a really good thing that we personally planned ahead. Mm. If you didn't, that's kind of a...
You're swimming up the creek with only your hands, bud.
I would say it's kind of a safety issue. I know even for smaller events, we would usually...
Have you actually, this is my question to you. Did you see any kind of medical personnel or any kind of standby ambulance or anything like that for emergency reasons?
No.
Because I have not.
So here's the thing, and this is something that you may not realize of Airsoft events. For a lot of Airsoft events, the answer is no in terms of an EMS or ambulance literally staying there. Mm-hmm. But there's almost always someone with some sort of medical experience designated with equipment, or someone, or everyone should on the admin side. This may be something I can make a note about to ask our 2 team members was, did they have an actual medical contingency? Because I am sure of a place like Lion Claws, they almost certainly did.
But there was no guy at least waving his hand in the very beginning of the briefing saying, if there is, team leaders, if you have a guy on the ground bleeding or something, go to this individual right here. That was never done.
Yeah, and
so that was a concern for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm so used to these events that I didn't even think about that. But for you, that's a good point. I know for me, for planning some of the smaller events, I think we had an annual event we would do, and in those events, I would say, hey, during the initial safety brief, it's like, hey, I'm CLS certified. I got a CLS bag. If something were to happen, take the person here or do this. We'll call 911. And then also there's a very common shout out to Drake over there at 907 up there in Alaska. He was medically certified in a lot of stuff, and he would play out there and say, hey, if something were to happen, he would become an admin to help address the situation.
Come to think of it, even when I just mentioned that guy to run through glass, I don't remember if there was an admin or if there wasn't, but I think there was an admin in that little room. But even then, nobody even checked the guy to make sure that he wasn't bleeding from anywhere. So
that's a good point.
If you got yourself into pretty serious trouble, you better hope that somebody was nearby, because nobody checked him. He looked fine. I wanted to check him, but considering that he was standoffish or whatever, I'm like, okay, bud.
It's actually a good point because again, I know briefly talking with my our teammates who were out there admitting, I bet they did not do that many rehearsals on this topic, even if it was verbal. So that's definitely a question I'll ask them, because that's an interesting point, and that's actually a kind of a serious safety.
Because we were booking it from left to right, and if you didn't make way, or running into you, or if you didn't make way and you shove somebody out of your way, and they go through a glass panel that was basically top to floor, you're gonna get seriously hurt.
Yep. Speaking of just other admins, there were a lot of volunteers who came out, and I'm pretty sure they didn't get paid or anything. They just came out and said, like, I know for our two team members, they wanted to go, but they didn't get tickets in time, so they said, hey, can we just come out and admin and just have that experience? And Alliance Clause was super open to it. They helped out. They had their part to play. And I do know other volunteers are out there. There's a couple of guys in uniform who helped and set up prior, who knew CRISPR and stuff. I think it might be CRISPR's team. So definitely shout out to all those guys. I don't know all the team affiliations, but they definitely did a good job helping make this happen. I do know they definitely had to stay behind for a good bit and clean up all the grenades. That was fun. I feel sorry.
I cleaned up my a good small portion of my grenades. I cleaned up a little bit.
Kind of out of order, but this is kind of something else. Is with you never going to an event like this, did you expect there to be like a raffle or anything like that then?
No, but considering that, so at my real steel competitions, one, there wasn't a raffle, and then the second time around when I went to it again, there was. So it was kind of like a 50-50 thing, kind of, about the raffle. Even if I was expecting one, I was probably not going to put money into it, because I bought everything I needed. So it was a nice touch.
Yeah. For me, doing this for so long, it's kind of a given in the airsoft community now for big events like this, but it's not something you should take for granted. And I think that's great that fields continue to do so for a lot of big events like this. I know Cryptic City 5 I went to as well recently. Even that one only had like 100, 150 people, and they still did one. And it's just nice to see that. I think a lot of people now take that for granted, and they shouldn't. Let's see. Okay, so here's another thing the admins were very reactive to. People moving bunkers and barriers. So I can think of 4 instances where players attempted to move stuff around the field that they were not supposed to. And how they handled that. So a couple things is, the first one I saw was our side that Friday night moving a floor sweeper out of a building as cover. First off, I don't understand what compels people to do this. No matter what airsoft field you go to, no matter how many times you brief it, if there's enough stuff just on the floor, players are going to try to do this.
Pick it up.
And here's the thing. I've been doing this for a while, but I don't understand. The rules say don't move bunkers and barriers, and people move bunkers and barriers. I don't get it. Now, with that said, this time, allegedly, the guys asked admins for permission. And this is both kind of a double-edged sword with these incidents, is the admins were very good at calling these guys out and making them stop, but also they were not consistent, because even CRISPR said during the Saturday safety brief was, if you want to move something, ask the admins, because sometimes they would let you do it. So I know there was that. I know another time they got permission was also on our side, was moving that big freezer refrigerator into that main hallway to give them more cover. They were allowed to do that as well. And I think for the average player who may not notice that, they may think, well, they're doing it. Why can't I do it? Right?
Yeah.
And that's the issue with the consistency. Kind of a nitpick, but I do think it's supported. I would say it's better just to say, don't do it. Stop. And just tell people not to. The other 2 times I saw it happen was on Cartel's side. In both cases, they were not allowed to do so.
Yeah, I saw it once, and it was
just a cardboard, right?
No, it wasn't cardboard. It was a door.
Yeah, well,
so there was a bunch of guys that were down.
Yeah.
There were a bunch of guys that were down, and Cartel picked up a door. I was moving it like a shield.
A riot shield.
Just a riot shield, and then of course just shot out the admin to take it away. And as soon as the door was taken away, the admin walked off. We just lit up the either the Cartel, or we lit up one of the guys on the ground and said, "Oh, we didn't see this helmet."
Well, the issue of specifically that incident.
That was
well. For me, the issue is at the end of the day, the players who did that got away with it, both in terms of no penalties, but also the reason they were doing it was to get personnel to revive them and drag them back. And ultimately, they did succeed, save for one guy. They got half a squad back, and I was like, well, they still got what they wanted. What the admin should have said, you, you're down dead and just take the door from them, right? But they didn't. And again, this is, again, training, rehearsal, stuff like that's important. Again, this is something I've had some experience with, and it sucks, but the best way of doing this is have proper briefing, be strict about it, and then nip it in the bud as fast as you can by having tentative rests. Because then you don't have to do that to them, because you can get to them before they even do any damage, right? And the other instance I saw was that Friday night when they saw our guys moving that street sweeper. They got confused and said, well, they're doing it, why can't they? And just got a bunch of cardboard shields. Next question is, what are some things that you would personally do differently if you could do it over again? So it's an AR comment strictly on yourself. I know for me, I probably would have never even worn my night vision. The first Friday night game, I had my night vision on a Rhino mount, and then I had my GoPro on the side to kind of work with it. What that led to was kind of some weird GoPro footage. You'll probably see in some future videos for that night. And then I barely even used the night vision. The one time we were in the basement, I pulled it out of my pouch, which is, I did carry it on me. I pulled it out of my pouch, turned it on, and left it in my dump pouch. And anytime I needed it, I would just pull it out and wear like binoculars and kind of just one hand the rifle. And it's like, I'm not really planning on shooting with this. I'm just looking around, and then I'll pull out my weapon light if I have to. So for me, that was kind of a big one. Two, I already mentioned it, is getting a better IR laser. Mine was pretty garbage. I bet that fake EOTech from China that I gave you for your rifle would probably work better. With how some of these guys are working with their IR lasers, it probably was.
Equipment, so that would be, I would still run the same rig, but I would probably have more pouches for the different magazines, half tracers, half regular. Actually getting my own radio, because even though I only used it once, I should have really used it, because the second and final time that I was jumped, I should have radioed you, because none of the other teammates believed me when I saw a cartel member running saying, hey, I'm pulling real tight security, I need you and one other person on me right now, we're going to get jumped.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of an AR in ourselves, right? Something I would add for you is, now that you've kind of gotten a taste of just how chaotic this can be, and plus like all the layers you got on your head, it's really important to get a good headset with your radio.
Yeah.
Having your radio on full volume, on speaker, with no headset of any type, shoved in the mag pouch, it's serviceable in certain situations, but with so much going on and all that other factors, it's really not that effective. That's why it's good to have that headset plugged in. It minimizes all this layering you have to do. It does help in the long run.
And tracers, grenades, proper pouches. Everything else was pretty fine. It was, everything that would change was just I had to learn it. That was the very basic of it.
Yep. Okay, next one is things that we haven't already talked about that we didn't like or want changed. And I got a whole list. See here. Okay, here's the big one. So, enforcement of the grenade number rule. So, at Lion Claw's games, according to their rule set, you were only allowed to carry 2 grenades on you at a time. I was pretty strict with myself on that because I wanted to follow the rules. But I saw a lot of players who said screw it and were walking around with like 4+ grenades on like a keychain, and they would just pull it and yank the pin and just toss it.
I carried 3 by the end of it, but
yeah, and for me, like, it's not a big deal because no one was following it. But at the same time, like, I even talked to my friends who are admins. I said, hey, for the rest of Saturday and Sunday, like, please try to enforce this, because that's a big balancing issue, right? Because if you give me the option to carry that many grenades, I could probably integrate 6+ grenades on me immediately. And that's a very big deal in comparison to 2 that I did have on me. When you're trying to clear every room, that really, if there's someone in there, you kind of need a grenade, And I like having the number of grenades limited to people, because that meant only so many times you just toss a grenade in before someone had to clear that room. And that's a good balancing thing. But it wasn't followed. What's also very confusing is, because they didn't allow tag-in rounds, they got rid of the Lion Claw's grenader rule. But they could have still used it and just said, those are the guys that can have 4 grenades instead of 2, right? But they didn't even do that, which I thought was kind of weird. I mean, you only have 2 roles available at this event, even though Lion Claw has 4 or 5. Grenader could have been modified, and they could have done it, Here is another role AR comment I had, is because there's only the Rifleman SMG, it would be cool if they had a Grenader. This is kind of a controversial one, but I think this type of field would have been cool to have a Riot Shield role. See, and let me explain. Let me explain, because you're already making that noise, and a lot of players are if they hear this as well. I've dealt with a lot of Riot Shield users during my time as adminning as well, and there's a way to balance them. So how this would work, and there were players that did show up with Riot Shields, despite telling ahead of time they were not allowed for this event. They showed up anyway, and they had to say, nope, put it back in the car. What you could do is make Riot Shields be impenetrable to BBs, but grenades could still kill them, right? You could do that, and you could also say, hey, Riot Shield guys can only carry a sidearm. They can't carry a primary. This is a rule that we did up in Alaska, and it worked quite well. Obviously, if you hit them on the flanks and hit the actual body, they're still out, and so on. So what this meant was they are essentially mobile bunkers against small arms fire, which would have made a great balance for many hallways and that choke point down there, trying to get to the next room, right? Because people could literally follow that guy with the Riot Shield. But if someone tossed a grenade or hit him, they're still done, right? I think that could have been a good balance for this specific event, but it was not something that went through, and I'm a little saddened by that, because I think that would have been a way to help mitigate a lot of the choke points. What do you think about that?
Doorways would have been more of a bitch and a half. Excuse me my language, but it was just like, I don't know how I feel about Riot Shields, because they just stack one above the other in a doorway very easily. That would have been
here's another thing.
Very difficult.
Here's another thing as well. Part of them being a unique class for an event like this would be you also limit how many on each team. Like, what if you had 3 on each team?
That's only 3. Okay.
Yeah, you see what I mean? Like, it's not just, hey, anyone can show up and Riot Shields are allowed.
Riot Shields everywhere. This is Modern Warfare 2, boys.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you would have a very finite number, sort of like for those listening, how a lot of fields handle like sniper cards, where it's very small number that can do it. But that would be kind of I think that'd be kind of cool thing to see for this. Here's an idea that I think I'm going to shoot by you and tell me what you think. So in the main choke point of that main hallway past the food court, in that just before the intersection, there was a lot of use of people just standing around behind clear glass display windows. What if admins had more prep time and actually taped over those with duct tape or with cardboard or sheets so you couldn't see through it constantly? Because the issue was, part of it being a choke point was everyone could see who was in that other building ready to fire before they even exposed themselves. So if you, even half of the windows just covered up to where no one could safely peek out of it, maybe that would balance to say like, hey, I didn't know a whole squad just ran around this corner at me, right? Unless you hear them. What do you think about that?
Because players were already doing that to each other by shining flashlights at each other. And that was a very crucial thing. Who had the more flashlights? And the ones shining into the glass, yeah, can't see like what's going on in the store over there, but then we would shine lights back at them, so that way it was self-motivated to shine flashlights at everybody that we can. And it was also a good point for just recon, a little bit of recon, by being able to do call-outs to each other. That is a double-edged sword, and we've kind of self-mitigated that.
Yes, but I would also say, with this being a cops and robbers game, where you're not supposed to take it that seriously, I think your point makes good sense. If they attempted to lean in more in the Milsim angle, where would you be able to look behind glass at an enemy and say, yeah, I'm fine? You know what I mean? It's kind of this goofy Airsoft thing. So it was just an idea. I just shot by to see what you would think. See here. We talked about all this other stuff. Oh, here's another rule change I think that would be interesting. This is a rule that you usually see at something like Milsim West, is another big Milsim company, is if you wear actual body armor, so a helmet plus front and back hard plates, then you can carry 1 extra medical item. So instead of 2 tourniquets for us, it would be like a 3rd tourniquet.
I was never told this.
No, that is not a rule.
That is not a rule for that.
No,
okay.
That is a rule for a different Milsim.
Okay. I was shocked there.
Yeah, called Milsim West. So for example, like, do you think that would have added something to this event?
Oh, it would have added a lot more.
Yeah,
it would have given me another crutch to stand on, because, mind you, I'd have to. Yeah, I could do it like tomorrow, but I would also handicap me further, because now I'm carrying an extra 10 pounds.
Yeah.
Because body armor is body armor, but you know.
Yeah, especially an event like this, when you're not rucking around. Like, I would have totally taken that deal if I heard that was a thing. So, and I think that'll be a cool aspect to it as well. See here. Something we were talking about is like just add more objectives in the basement. We talked about mission variety and whatnot. And then before I get to kind of my big one for AAR, do you have anything else to add?
Being somebody that was like just into the game and also being like, well, the double-edged sword is like, yeah, be part of the team, or I should be part of the team, should do this, should do that. But if I wanted to go my own way and do my own thing, I was allowed to. And really, so long as I wasn't damaging anything, which I clearly wasn't, I was left alone. And that's how I was able to learn a lot more about my equipment, by just doing stuff on my own. Finding out that clearing anything by myself is a terrible idea. Pre-shooting something while following the rule of, so long as the weapon is shouldered and you are looking down the sights, pre-firing corners changes the entire game. Pre-firing is the law.
Well, the interesting is I've been to a couple of fields, a lot of like small local ones, where they don't allow that.
Really? But it was never stated, so that means, in this one.
Yeah, I don't think it's an issue here, but I have seen fields deal with that because they don't want people to like shoot and keep moving around the corner, right?
But pre-firing is the law. Learning about, again, I said this again, but learning my grenades, learning what my equipment does.
Okay, and then kind of the last comment I had was Cartel 1. And there was kind of some voices being heard at the end of it. First off, I'll say this. When you're winning, you were clearly winning. When you were losing, you were clearly losing. And at the end of the day, I really don't care because I was having fun. With that said, why people kind of having issues with it was Friday was the first game. And Cartel, so I guess Cartel had an advantage that day. Really how that hour and a half went was we were slowly taking land from them, getting to a stalemate, but it was fun. Like either side was kind of, winning or losing on that one. Saturday day games, we were completely wiping the floor of Cartel to the point where we had time to go take pictures in a hallway. Right, and at that point...
Drip gang was fire.
And at that point, when you're having that much free time, is it really that much fun for either side? So I understand what the admins did after that, which is they purposely... And they're very transparent to the players about it, which I respected, which was for the Saturday night game onward, they were very vocal about saying, hey, here are some things we're doing differently to give Cartel a advantage to give them more of a fighting chance. Well, it seems that fighting chance, along with some other things, led them to not just getting a fighting chance, but completely blowing it out of the water by the second half of the game. So that night game, it was pretty much a loss on our end. But we did save quite a few of the balloons. So it's still like, okay, land-wise, we got a butt kick, but we still did decent on that objective. So what's going on here? And then Sunday, when they switched to spawns, which that was planned ahead. I'm not blaming them for that. That's just a balancing issue of the field that we talked about earlier. That's something they were already planning on doing, was switching the spawns for each day. But then they said, Cartel has 3 spawn cards, and we get 0 for Sunday. I'm not sure if they ever gave us some eventually. But stuff like this really did play into it. I also wonder, and this is speculation, and I'm probably going to ask, in that interview with my D13 members or admins, is did they ever skew props being on that side of the field at that point, right? Because after that point onwards, Cartel really blew it out of the water. Likewise, I don't think they ever announced an actual point score.
They never did.
Yeah, which is kind of odd. Again, I really don't care, but there are quite a few people who did. And I'm more curious about it from just an admin side of the house, just understanding that more than anything else. But there was some controversy there. But again, I don't care. I really don't care. Okay, so one last question to wrap this up. Would you go again?
The very next day. Like tomorrow.
Awesome.
I no, you don't understand. I want to camp in that mall like a homeless person. That's
awesome.
How bad.
So for me, I would say yes with a caveat, which is I would really want to go again as a team. If we went as 3 to 4 people and we weren't going with RSM, it would have been a much different experience. Like us going to those night games, because RSM didn't participate in night games, was very different leadership-wise and organization-wise from going with them on a day game. If D13 went again, it was like 3 or 4 guys and not like 6, 7, 8. I would seriously reconsider. But in a close quarters environment, communication, teamwork is really important to me. So that's why I just gave that caveat. But generally, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
So that's the end. If you don't have any more thoughts, I mean, that's kind of our end of our AAR comment. I mean, you got anything you want to add?
This match, while I was absolutely amazing, has probably ruined a lot of other airsoft competitions because I'm going to be basing them off solely off of this.
That's kind of the end comments. Thanks guys for listening. I hope you got something out of this. I'd love to hear your comments on it. Also, some of the images you're going to see and some of the video overlaying isn't just by me. It's from a lot of people who were there at that event, and I'll try to get as many of their their info in the description. So thanks for guys for watching. I'll see you around.
If you ain't dressed in drip, you're gonna drown.
All right.